Okay, am I audible? Because it says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
You should be able to come on video now.
Now I think it is visible.
Yeah.
Let me just put my phone on. Yeah. Are we good to go?
Would you like to
Am
come
I
on video?
Yeah. There we go.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes. All right. I think we'll begin now. If you're good to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Hi, everyone. We welcome you to another session of hashtag Mentor Us. This time, we're hosting a two-part series on IBC. And part one is going to be covering the origins and the evolution of IBC, the latest amendments, and the COVID impact that has that COVID has had on IBC. The panelist for the day is Advocate Soumya Singh. We are extremely proud to bring you Advocate Soumya Singh. Ma'am has been a very progressive and a very ambitious lawyer. Ma'am is enrolled with the Bar Council of Delhi since 2014, and ma'am has had an experience of more than 5 years with the bar. Ma'am is actively associated in diverse areas of litigation and dispute resolution, especially involving complex legal and commercial technical issues on a pan-India basis. Advocate Soumya has also represented many clients on a broad spectrum before the Honorable High Courts and various other fora throughout the country. Ma'am has also been very active in matters pertaining to prevention of money laundering, insolvency, of course, that's the session that we're having today, economic offenses and financial crimes. And ma'am has also had the experience of handling many high profile and very sensitive, time sensitive cases. Apart from ma'am's expertise,
I have a different session for that someday because it's really very interesting. Someday.
we'd love to have you take a session on that as well. But right, so to sum it all up, apart from ma'am's expertise in litigation and dispute resolution, ma'am has also had an extensive experience of drafting and settling and vetting of contracts and agreements, which is extremely important for all students to get a grasp on, because that's what your legal career is what entirely depends on. Ma'am is
Lifelong.
also exactly. Ma'am is also very actively engaged in various women related issues, and ma'am is also very passionate about women empowerment as a whole. So we have at least three feminists on the panel today, which is rather the entire panel today.
Okay.
Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. So, how do we begin this? Are you going to shoot something, or I want to just lay on a platform as to what is IBC, and then coming up to the main
Yeah,
topic of the.
I think you laying a basic foundation of what IBC is will be nice for everybody to start off with, and then we'll start having discussion spaces wherever we are on the conversation.
All right. So I think post-pandemic period, hardly there is anyone who is an individual, a home buyer, MSME owner, or a normal being it's not unaware of the suspension of IBC happening, and also the insolvency coming so much into news, and bankruptcy being anticipated in the coming future as soon as the suspension of IBC time period gets over. So I don't think anybody is unaware of what the basic grounds of bankruptcy and insolvency is all about. But let me just quickly define that, you know, uh, bankruptcy is a stage where a person is saying, okay, this is it. I am done. I do not have money to take care of my business or my creditors or my secured loan or anything of this sort. And insolvency becomes a legal process as to how to deal with it. It primarily, comes up with representation, restructuring, more new proposals coming up by the CIRP process, and then eventually coming up with, say, plan B. And if that not works, then it ultimately goes on to liquidation. So coming back to the story and its origin, as we have decided the topic for the day, let me tell you this, that before this, it's not that we did not have legal provisions to how to deal with people, getting insolvent, or how to deal with bankruptcies, or how to deal with people who are just raising their hands saying, hey, I'm done, I've had my nice time, I have no money, I am a Vijay Mallya, I'll pack my bags and I'll go out of the country, and you can absolutely do nothing about it. And it's not only about my life. There are thousands and thousands of cases where people had nice time. The NPAs are going, staunchly high rate, say about 8 lakh crores, per quarter. You know, a, a group of banks are, stating this in quarter one of the year, and we weren't able to do absolutely anything about it. And that is why we needed a consolidated act where we could do strict adherence of the law against such people, such defaulters, and we could also do that in a time limit, which makes IBC very exclusive because it adheres things into a time limit. Now, before this, I will quickly draw your attention, as I've done it before, that post 91 depression, since banks were facing this NPA problems, legislation came into picture, things evolved, SARFAESI came into picture, debt recovery.
I'll just pause you for a split second there. I'm really sorry. I think
Sure.
Ishika Jain has raised her hand. Ishika, it will not be possible for us to unmute the attendees at this point of time. And this is for all the audience and every attendee at large. If there's any question or anything that you wish to ask ma'am, or just in generally talk about, there would be a Q&A panel on your screen. We would really appreciate you putting your questions and posing whatever doubts you have there. Also, there is a distinction between chat and Q&A. A chat will be something that will be directed just to us panelists. A Q&A is a separate section where you are allowed to and permitted to put in whatever questions you have. So please make use of that. You can put in whatever questions you want to throughout the course of the session, and ma'am will answer them depending on wherever she is in the conversation. Probably sporadic.
I think has picked up a very nice question, which we'll be facing, we'll be answering it later. He says that
Sure.
has IBC covered all the loopholes before SARFAESI and DRT and everything? So
Precisely. So I think
you
this
have
is,
to
yes,
wait
this
till
is
the end.
something.
We'll take this up. I think that
Yes.
could work as a bait for you to stay there till the end of the webinar. So yeah, going back to what it was. So we had something on the platter. We had, as said, SARFAESI and then DRT, and then prevention of money laundering came into picture. We could still file, winding up petitions before the Honorable High Courts. All of that was happening. But then there wasn't a consolidated, act or a code where, this is just one place, one go-to place. Be there and you're done with it. One-stop shop, and then like having an umbrella effect, and you have it all under one umbrella, and then you deal with it and you're fine by it. Also, for a fact that where you have something to say from your side of story, it's not that there are a group of people coming up, taking over, taking decisions on your behalf, and you might just end up getting nothing in the end. As IBC law, which we'll quickly discuss in detail, but I'll quickly mention that committee of creditors, which is like the backbone of the IBC law that came into picture, which gives a right for every single debtor to be part of the committee of creditors and have a say. So I will never have that feeling of being unheard. Now imagine before this, if there was an unsecured creditor or there was an unsecured loan, I mean, your situation definitely goes for a toss and for indefinite period. God knows about the interest. If you end up getting your claimed principal amount, you had a nice deal.
Yes.
So it is only after, India as a country facing, problems in ease of doing business, non-performing assets going peak high, lot of fraudulent, schemes happening around the corner, lot of corruption, lot of prevention of a lot of money laundering happening around the corner, which could ultimately, give a knee jerk to any economy per se. And that is why we needed a consolidated act or a code where we could have that sword hanging on your head, if I'm not wrong, to be very strict, a sword hanging on your neck saying that, you better do things in the timeline, otherwise, we have all the powers to bring you down, to pin you down. And this
basically
is
to keep everybody in check.
Yeah, to have that checks and balances.
Yes.
To have that checks and balances. Also for a fact that I wanted to have a deterrent effect on rest of the people. doing undervalued transactions or fraudulent transaction. B, I'm not saying that I am having such kind of a barbaric uh, this thing that I'll pin you down and I'll bring you to the end. I am not up for liquidation. I'm not going to wind you up. This is not what my aim is. I am only and only emphasizing on having a restructured plan of how to deal with the default, how to deal with the debt, how to you not being, unnecessarily being favored, how to keep sure that the secured debtors, the unsecured debtors, the financial creditors, the operational creditors, everyone's interest is being taken into consideration. And a consolidated plan comes with the commencement and the approval of the committee of creditors, which has the holistic view, but within a timeline.
Right.
And as we proceed, we see each day, even during the time of lockdown, this pandemic COVID-19, a lot of amendments coming up only to revive, to restructure, to strengthen the law in a way that to deal with. So any law that comes into picture has its own pros and cons, and as it proceeds, you try to because there are people, I don't want to malign any group or a house, but then there are people like Mr. Ambani, and when I say Ambani, I say the Dhirubhai Dad Ambani, who is known to be the father of the taxation laws in India. And when I say this, it is only because he had so many loopholes to point out and take benefit out of.
Advantage
that,
out of.
It was only Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani trying to get benefit out of some lacuna in the act, and only later the amendment was made.
Yes.
Which has happened in the past 4 years, that there was some blind spot, there was some gray area which was taken care of, and the act itself is evolving at a pace. And now what we have today is something which is as good as it can be marked as a national level thing, international level thing, because as discussed before, if we go back to all the laws, from Indian Penal Code to civil procedure to evidence to all of that to our constitution, we have adopted so much out of laws of different countries, primarily the British laws. But then and here comes some law which is just say about less than 5 years old, and it is it
is
has
a
been
legislation of our own, basically our own brainchild.
Absolutely, this is our inception, and we are improvising it day by day, and we can see the positive changes actually coming up. We could see how many trillions of rupees was the debt, how much could be recovered without IBC, and what with a thumping majority of 43% of recovery being made after IBC. Earlier, it was just 37% of recovery, which was absolutely no number. Imagine having a 2.29 trillion rupees of NPAs hanging at the heads of the banks, and at the end of the day, they are not able to recover that much money. But after coming off the IBC, 43% of the recovery is being done, and imagine in such a short span time. I'm not saying that this is just complete in its shape and form. It does require certain changes in the coming future. And yes, the world was not prepared about the COVID. And yes, we are going to face a lot of insolvency and bankruptcy in the coming future. In say another 6 to 1 year, it will be flooded with such insolvency. Thank God the insolvency and bankruptcy cannot be, Section 7 cannot be filed against an individual. Otherwise, every I think every next court would have been flooded with say thousands of cases against individuals.
Only
and it also becomes more so of a personal vendetta, boss. It becomes a lot of personal vendetta. People become into that vindictive mode, and under the cover of COVID-19, they would just try to take revenge out of people, and which have totally been killed the purpose of IBC. So we have to evolve, we have to improvise, we are doing that, and we have to make ourselves competent enough for this challenging time which we are facing and we will be facing. Because let me just tell you, the ripples effect will only extend, Rishwin. The ripples effect of COVID-19 will be reflected in the second half of the year.
Yes.
Now that unlock has happened, Now that people do have power to reach out and start their business, they don't have enough capital, they don't have the liquidity, they don't have labor, they don't have enough funds to run the plants and machinery. They do have certain relaxations and schemes from the government, but then that's not suffice. So accordingly, we have to make sure to make certain changes in the code, that how to deal with insolvency and bankruptcy of people who are now facing the after effects of the COVID post lockdown, unlocking. Sorry.
Right. So no, but so this is something that you touched upon briefly. That this is not a law that we have sort of inherited from our ancestors, say the Britishers
Yes.
or the Americans,
As
right?
you
This
may
is
call
our
it.
own. Exactly. It is our own brainchild. It is a homegrown sort of a solution, right? But that is also another reason why there are almost on a daily basis there are some new changes, some amendment, some new judgment, some new order that you get to know, which helps you sort of see where the focal point is or where it is going on in the future, where the law is being evolved. But
Absolutely.
on the other hand, you have sort of archaic, if you want to call them, but you have stable laws. That's what I would want to pinpoint out. As say, you have the Evidence Act from the 1970s. You have contracts from 1890s, right? 1887, 1890s. You have your IPC, CRPC. So
Definition of murder is still, it has not changed in say over 200 years.
exactly. But so
I mean, there are
here,
techniques to kill a person now, but then it very much falls into that definition till date.
right. So here is where I was coming to. You have these laws which were formed, of course, with a lot of research and with a lot of back knowledge that the formulators of these legislators, so to say, these people had, right? If a law came out in 1880s or in 1890s, of course, they had something in place, some concept in place which they already had. And cut to 2020, we have about 200 years worth of precedents to learn from, and the law has beautifully evolved. So now on a daily basis, you don't have new changes. Everything's it's not volatile anymore. You understand what the law is and where it is headed. With IBC, even the implementers, if I may take the liberty of saying that, even the implementers aren't sure of where this is going. So what is better, to have a stable law which you can implement on a larger scale and everybody is governed by it and everybody knows how to navigate through that law, or to have a law which evolves with the growth of the people and with the evolution of its people, but then there is also a large amount of uncertainty there which may curb creativity and which may curb business that it is trying to help. Rather, what is better here?
So I think it is always the best of both the worlds.
Uh-huh.
To have that pecuniary and deterrent effect on people, yet having an ease to run an entrepreneurship. Because my ultimate aim is not to punish a person and put him behind the bars. My ultimate aim is to have an ease of doing business. Let's have some negotiations. Let's have a common table which is, governed and supervised by institution like, adjudicating authority, or a setup like CIRP, a person who is, unbiased, who is totally like, it's not like arbitration. In fact, you must be aware that there are certain arbitration proceedings that are so biased. So I needed an entity which is not biased towards me, which is not biased towards you, a third person altogether, which is who is working under the supervision of the adjudicating authority under a given timeline. But his aim is not to pin you down. Again, his aim is to come up with a plan that let's get going. But because at the end of the day, the purpose here is, as you're saying, that we okay, now starting from the credit that we must give it to our legislators, because they had in-depth and amazing knowledge of the human nature, the human instinct. They knew what would fall ahead, they knew what would follow, how a person
Right.
reacts in a given situation. And that is
Right.
how they beautifully amended and brought these things into action, brought these acts into picture. And over an evolvement of time, as the technology advanced, modernization happened, globalization happened, the only thing changed was there were, say, about thousands of acts today, more than 1000 acts today stand obsolete. They don't have, like, a very small example as I may put up. There is something called a Sarai Act.
Mhm.
Sarai Act says that a person is given a basic opportunity to use a washroom of any motel or a hotel, or any kind of a guest house, or he could ask for a glass of water.
Water.
Not that big, because it is like, it is very much my fundamental right, and I could ask for it. I couldn't ask much for it. This is very basic. So this right, you're still, it is covered in the constitution, but then you don't need a Sarai Act for that. And there are several other thousands of acts which stand obsolete. So as we advance, we have to take up what our forefathers have given up and given us in the legacy, and we have to have an holistic view to cover all the possible loopholes that are being developed parallelly through the advancement of technology, artificial intelligence, cyber crimes, and all of that. So if there is a good part, there's a bad part. If there is an ethical hacking, there is also unethical cyber warfare happening. As these days, if you get to see that China is not only fighting with India on the borders, they're also about to have a cyber warfare and whatnot. And
Right.
be it or not, how funny this may sound, this always have a rippling effects on rest of the other things. Now imagine if there is some person who's sitting there, okay, I have a plan B, I'll work it out post COVID, I have some savings, I'll infuse some capital into my business, I will not go for insolvency or bankruptcy, I will work and resettle my plan with my creditors and debtors and work it out. And one night, because of the victim of the cyber warfare, all his money in the account is washed out. Now what
Right.
do you think what would happen?
Precisely.
In that case, a government should be smart and swift enough to come up with a guidelines as to how to deal with victims of cyber warfare.
Mhm.
Or government should be smart enough to, or RBI should be smart enough to categorize such companies or individuals or MSMEs who have been victims of cyber warfare. So yes, I completely agree with you with the fact that with the baggage of legacy that we have been carrying, we need to evolve. And the difference, only the very basic difference that which we have been taught in the very first year of law, the difference between the act and the code. Insolvency and bankruptcy is a code.
The code.
It can only tell me ways to how to go about it.
Right.
Where to go about it, how to go about it are very basic important questions. It only tells me that what is my right and how to go about it. But
Right.
to define that right is done in Companies Act. To define that fraud that you have done, insolvency and bankruptcy is just one parallel proceedings that can be done by an against a corporate debtor by a financial creditor. But then there is IPC as well. You can file a cheating case
Right.
against the corporate debtor. There is RERA, there is NCDRC, there is conciliation and arbitration proceedings. So there are, and you can file a civil case for that matter.
Of
So
course.
there are
Right.
parallelly so many proceedings that can do. But the point here is how swift one could go about it. How meticulous
What's
can
the
the
most
process be?
convenient and most foolproof method to do it?
Foolproof method, absolutely. So code is only way telling me, okay, this is the way I have, this is the modus operandi, as you may call it, I need to follow. But then my
Right.
rights are somewhere else. My rights are there in the Companies Act, my rights are there in the IPC, my rights is there in the Constitution. I need to take care of this. And it is the onus on the government to come up with clauses or come up with sections and amendments in a way, like as we've been seeing that we have a lot of news, and we will discuss it further, that there has been people favoring the suspension of IBC for 1 year. There are people who are dead against about it, which of course we will discuss the repercussions, which is happening because if some changes has been significant changes being made in a single code, and each individual is facing the effect or can relate to, imagine how important the code itself is.
Exactly.
So we have to take the best of both the worlds, Rishwin. We have to take
Right.
care of the basic structure, and we have to take care of what has been told in the past, the evidence, the contract, the Companies Act, all of that. But then yes, since every country is now, and let me tell you, every country has very, very deterrent with the defaulters, be it any kind of defaulter. Every country is very stringent with the defaulters. They have a little similar or a different kind of procedures that what we have in the IBC code. But then a phase that India as a country has faced prior to IBC,
Right.
when it comes to handling such defaulters, it has been very disappointing. And IBC definitely has come up with a silver lining, for sure.
So I will use this point to segue onto our next point for discussion now. So we've established that yes, the frequent amendments, the judgments, all the new jurisprudence that's coming about, it's necessary and it's
Hmm.
helping, right?
Hmm.
So the whether or not of it has already been answered, that yes, it should happen, but the way it is being done is
Hmm.
now also under scanner. The
Hmm.
amendments are being brought, which is good, but the kind of amendments are being brought, are all of those necessary? Are they actually there for the betterment of lenders, which in fact is the reason why IBC was brought about? Or are they just being used these days as a tactic to sort of delay the proceedings and further, waste the courts and the taxpayers money and time both?
Okay. So, for this, I think I will leave it up to you. And I will not give being a lawyer, I cannot just, I can argue up from the both sides. So, I will not say anything against the government, because this government doesn't know how to, face criticism and take criticism. So I will not do it on a public platform. But then, of course, there always a scope of improvisation. And thus, I would try to do the same to what personal views I have for that. So earlier, lenders, and primarily when I say lenders, it is financial institutions, NBFCs, and the banks,
Right.
who face the heat because of any transaction being deliberately being fraudulent, or out of a bad business decision being taken, or a rippling effect of depression, inflation, warfare, any kind of a thing. Because if you agree with me, MSME in the past few decades have become a very significant part of the economy. Say about 29% of the GDP is, it goes out to the MSMEs. So the government also had to come up with a plan how to deal with MSMEs. And that when it comes to lenders, and when it comes to MSMEs, they don't have a very congenial kind of a relationship. Now they are bound to do it, because now is such a time that if you don't boost your MSMEs, you'll have a hard time. But
Right.
prior to this, banks always wanted somebody with a collateral security, somebody with a personal guarantee, someone which already had a very strong financial groundings. And still they had this array of formalities being done. And despite all of that, we could hear all of these cases, be it Nirav Modi and Punjab National Bank, or be it Vijay Mallya with 7 consortium of banks proceeding against him, and several other cases being done, still happening despite of having such pre-requisition conditions before granting the loan. Now when it came to MSMEs, uh, suddenly the backbone wasn't this strong, and then they switched to financial institutions and NBFCs for loans. And NBFCs were readily available, so much so that NBFCs these days are now being criticized being nothing but a, I don't know if I may call it or not, but washing laundry of black money into white. And you lend money, and all of this becomes white. And a person who is even failing to give your money back is not being treated with such a deterrent effect. So at the end of the day, it always breaks the smooth running of the financial cycle in an economy. So it might I might say yes to the answer when it says that it just become a tool of delay in negotiation tactics. By Because supposedly, if being an MSME or some corporate firm, I have been dragged to NCLT, before the adjudicating authority, and there is this application being admitted. What happens next is, I also have my fair share of rights. I also have all my creditors and debtors to come into picture, and then there is COC being formed. Although the entire control of the company is taken by the IRP, but then I also have my rights to, suppose there is a single decision being taken, single order being passed by the adjudicating authority that goes against me, I can very much move ahead and go to the appellate authority and challenge it and buy out time. Or
Right.
for a matter of fact, that the deadline that was given, I mean, you look at how Bhushan Steel case was taken care of, and rest of the cases being taken care of, they are much delayed, and they have taken more than the double of the time prescribed in the IBC laws as well. So 270 days has gone for a toss. 330 days timeline has gone for a toss. They have taken time. And now imagine when during this lockdown period, the entire lockdown period has been excluded from such timeline given to the IRP to wind up things, to make a plan. So of course, in a way you can say that there has been a delay tactics, because we have given too much power to the debtor as well. But then as a holistic view, we have to make sure that as we compare to what proceedings and what rights a lender had before this under any other section of any other act, the picture relatively is much relieved in the IBC structure.
Better now. Right.
Absolutely.
So
It
then
is
to that extent, then IBC is meeting the larger goal that and the mandate that it was sort of taken out.
goes without saying.
Right.
And as we proceed, I would love to tell you as to how under different sections, say about a home buyer, which is now treated as a financial creditor, has faced
Yes.
problem before RERA, which is an authority only meant to deal with cases of this sort. He had
Right.
NCDRC. Jago Grahak Jago was one, this I don't know, statement, which had become a household statement. Everybody knew of it. But then has the justice prevail for people actually approaching to state commissions or NCDRC? And here comes insolvency and proceedings, which not every case takes 4 years or 3 years or 3.5 years. There are cases that had been winded up, and then there has been recovery of thousands of crores being made. Ultimate result is there has been a significant percentage of recovery being made under IBC. So yes, that
Right.
always helps in smooth running of the financial cycle of the country.
So in that case, like we just discussed, and you said that there is still some scope for improvement even in amendments. It is being used at times, of course, not always, as a delay tactic, but largely it is going on well. So wherever there are little scope and room for improvement that you see, what kind of improvements can we bring about, and is there something that we can learn from other countries? That is to say, how is the insolvency bankruptcy happening in other countries? How is India's different? Is there something that we can learn from them and implement so that the functioning of IBC as a code becomes better in India?
Okay, so as far as the insolvency and bankruptcy procedure is concerned, it is very much aligned. The Indian law is very much aligned with laws abroad. It's not, they're not poles apart. They're very much aligned together. And slowly and gradually, we are kind of keeping pace with, whatever procedures and things are happening, in the economies like US and countries like UK, which has always been a go-to or looked up to, parliaments which has adopted things and come up with laws very swiftly and very relevant, which our countries has taken, I don't know, insignificant period of years. So we are trying to have pace with it. One very significant difference is, which I'm expecting to happen in future, that an individual cannot declare himself to be insolvent under the IB code. And very soon we might just, one can do that in the US. In fact, there is a saying that the number of times one declares oneself insolvent, the richer he becomes.
It's a rebirth.
Let's talk about the president himself. Just go out and Google how many times Trump has declared himself insolvent, and let us not even discuss what Trump Tower earns or what Ivanka Trump is being, relying upon for her funds and fanciful life. So yes, so their scenario is very different. So the basic difference is the laws in the US are individual laws. They are individual specific. It is about my right. Your dog can't bark, your dog can't shit, you can't spit, you can't just leave your garbage near my area. The laws in India are society based. We have a very cohesive kind of environment in the society, and whatever, the law is nothing but the evolvement or the outcome of whatever viewpoint the country goes in whatever direction. We could see a significant changes made in the Indian Penal Code and CRPC post Nirbhaya, because the entire emotion of the country went into that direction, that we needed stringent laws. And when,
Right.
as a student, when I was going through that, I could not relate as to how conditions were before that.
Right.
It was a much needed change that came very late, for that matter. More so, we cannot say the same for IBC. I think it came well in time. Although the non-performing assets were, very disappointing, the numbers were very, very disappointing, and that had hit the economy very hard. But then the silver lining is now India is also slowly and gradually, coming up over the ranks when it comes to ease of doing business. Now, if
Yes.
I'm not wrong, we are on the 63rd number or something like that, which is a significant approach, because let's accept it, at the end of the day, it is all about the investments that we get from outside. And especially now, when every Ivy League university researcher is saying that India is going into deep mess. India is going to face a mayhem. India is going to face a lot of crisis. There's going to be a civil war like situation. All of these has to be curbed by one solution, which says lots and lots of FDIs. And if we want FDIs, we have to provide them a platform that says that, you know what, you're most welcome. And this is the country which has amazing, meticulous way of ease of doing business. And also, if there is a dispute, there is a code that gives you power to take over the working of the company that you've invested, and take a resolution plan and work alternatively, so that you don't go disappointed, or it should not stop you from investing in the country further.
Right.
So yes, definitely there are a lot of changes that are required. They also, like, for example, I'll be very if I am not wrong, I think UK has a provision that, like, we have committee of creditors. Committee of creditors comprises of each and every financial creditor. So secured, unsecured, everything comes into picture.
Right.
There they have power that if somebody is saying that I am not interested in the economic or the financial decision of the company, he can always opt out. Here we do not have that. We cannot willfully opt out of it. So there are few changes. So there is somebody who's sensible enough. He's like, let us just settle with whatever you have to give. I don't want to get into 3 years, 4 years of litigation. Let us be done with it. You have my NOC. I don't want to be part of committee of creditors. And in a way, I think it is a very good decision, because let me tell you with a very recent example, the problem that people are facing. The March 2020 order that said that, the home buy should be either 10% or should be 100 in numbers. Now imagine a home buyer coming from every walk of life. Not everybody has that rationality to get into the day-to-day working of a company. But then he has a say. He has the power of his single vote. And if there is a discrepancy, it is very difficult for 100 people to, get their consensus in one go, to let them agree to one, viewpoint. It is very difficult. And what if there is a majority, and you have to consider the decision of the majority, but then who is going against the, well-being of the company, or the resolution plan which works best for the company and for the creditors? The IRP is also bound to go.
Exactly. This is where I was coming to. So yes,
he's bound
I was
to
about
go
to
by
come to the
whatever
role of the
decision has been
IRP
taken.
then.
Yeah, he has to go by what COC has to say. And most of the time, when these committee of creditors are unhappy because the IRP is saying that you've been, going in a wrong direction, this is not what I would want to propose. I would want it to be, plan B and not plan A that you're suggesting. Then at the end of the day, he gets replaced. This is also one of the delay tactics. When committee of creditors are not happy with the working of the IRP because they think that he's biased, or he's not talking about things in our favor, he's actually trying to favor the corporate debtor, they immediately file an application before the adjudicating authority to change the IRP, which of course delays
And that
every
also damages the reputation of the IRP for no reason at all.
Oh yes, and that is why in the new ordinance it is being proposed. It's almost a matter of a week back, where they're saying that they're going to capsize the number of cases a single IRP can take. Let's
Okay.
accept it. It involves lot of mind, lot of patience, lot of structuring, and lot of calculations and numbers involved. There has to be
Right.
a capping, say 10 or 20 cases or whatsoever. Now what happens is, if there's some famous IRP who has done some top shot insolvency cases, he'll be the most sought after IRP. Now he is bound by all the people going up to him, approaching him and appointing him as their RP, and at the end of the day he is not able to uh, furnish justice to either of the COCs. So one has to take care of such points into consideration, that committee of creditors should be given power. I'm not against the fact, but then at times it is very difficult to bring such a large number to a single point of consensus. While in UK, a person has a right that, you know what, boss, I am not going to be part of this circus anymore. I am just giving you my NOC. I am happy with what I have. One in the hand is better than two in the bush, and that is why I am opting out. So I think India still has this thing into consideration. If the person is not a person who loves to have impending litigation going for indefinite period, and he wants to wind up things and be done with it, I think there has to be some provision to it.
Right, right, right. So I think let's take up at least a couple of questions before we proceed
Sure.
further to what the COVID situation has done, because I think that's largely what we are about to address now. So Shekhar Sahu is saying, "Ma'am, how has the IBC covered all the loopholes of the laws before, such as Sarfezi, DRT, etc.?"
Okay, so
Is
let me tell you something very funny.
Mhm.
If you may refer to certain cases, I think it was 2019 when Kritika Rubber Industry versus Canara Bank. The funny part
Mhm.
was, I mean, just imagine now when things are going parallelly. Some secured creditors have moved for winding up of the petition in the High Court. Some have moved to the DRT. Now the DRT is the during this pending has there is original application being filed, and the due process is being delayed as usual, as this happens in the DRT. And the other time, meanwhile in the High Court, the official liquidator is appointed, and he had been instructed to start the winding of petition. And
Right.
parallelly, during in the DRT, the attachment order was passed. And so much so that these, because there is a lack of communication between the stakeholders, there is a lack of communication when things are parallelly happening before debt recovery tribunal and the High Court or NCDRC. And since there is no cohesive information being passed to all the stakeholders, things went parallelly till the time they realized that when they had reached to a stage of bidding, they realized that, oh my God, one order needs to be cancelled, and they were unaware that there is a parallel proceeding going on before the DRT. So this is what IBC has done. IBC has come up with the latest order that was passed by NCLT, which is a different topic altogether, about the information utility, which I would like to mention in the next part. What it has made a common platform where all the financial information related to the corporate debtor is uploaded by the one of the financial creditors. It could be anyone, either financial or operational creditor, and it has been given access to anyone and everyone who could be a stakeholder. Now what happens is, because of this exclusive, and let me tell you, Rishwin, this is one thing, information utility is one of its kind, and it is a repository, information repository, which has not been set up or taken into consideration by any other country in the world apart from India. So this is our
Right.
brainchild, which I take a pride in mentioning, that we could not borrow anything. This is our brainchild. We could come up with something that has given us an exclusive platform to mention anything and everything related to finances of a company. And anyone who's about to get into, say, if there is certain information mentioned about a company that I'm about to invest, or certain information about a company that I'm about to collaborate with, or there is a certain information that I want to some real estate company that I want to get a house booked. So I can see all the information at the information utility platform, and then make my decision that, okay, I think this company is going sick. I think this company has a lot of defaulting. I think this company is into a lot of disputes, financial disputes. I might not want to collaborate. Or for that matter, on the other hand, if the report card, as you may call it, is good, it would encourage finances to come, because it is some authenticated information given and approved by both the parties, which can give a clear picture that there is no point of confusion. It is good, bad, ugly,
Right.
very simple.
Right.
So this is one thing that gives IBC much an upper hand as compared to SARFAESI, DRT, Money Laundering Act, and several other acts, because those are only inquiries to be done when some wrong is being done. Apart from insolvency and bankruptcy, that says that, you know what, even if you have done something wrong, we're not going to put you behind the bars. We're not going to just liquidate you or wind you up. What we're going to do it, we're going to come up with another plan and we can work it out, and you can still have the power once we're done with it. Or for that matter, once the proceedings is over, who knows if I can get back into the market again, get back into the picture, and I get my new set of investors and get going and be absolutely normal about it once my single default case has been taken care of IBC proceeding.
Right.
So I think IBC thus is given an upper hand, in my opinion. Definitely.
Right. Ma'am, here is another question that we've been asked, and it's a very classic sort of a question. It's something most of us also wondered when we were in law school and we were just about being taught about IBC at that point of time. Is if there's a proceeding which is going on in the DRT, then can a simultaneous application also be filed under NCLT?
NCLT definitely has an upper hand.
No, but can two simultaneous proceedings go on? That's the question.
NCLT will take over. NCLT will definitely take over.
Okay.
NCLT will take over.
Okay. Shekhar, I hope that...
is the period where all these decisions will be stopped, bring to halt. Everything will be under the control of the RP for this purpose, because there will be pending litigations with or without finances being involved. There could be an innumerable litigations, right? So not only DRT, any other proceedings happening, under any act or section comes, is brought to halt.
So NCLT will sort of be that umbrella proceeding, and everything else will be put to halt at that point of time. Okay. So let's go on to a little bit of working of IBC. There is a question, and I know this is something we also will answer eventually in the slide. So the question is that, are IBC laws also applicable on cross-border companies? This is the question, and here is what we had in store for the viewers, which is sort of related. What is the proposal of pre-packaged bankruptcy schemes? Because I know this is a concept which we've taken on from abroad, and companies which are away from the Indian subcontinent are privy to these deals. So what happens in that case?
So as going back to what our country is about and what our economy is all about, we are a developing economy and we need a lot of investors, especially after this time when we have got a knee-jerk effect at the economy. It is very important that we have foreign investors, and for foreign investors, somebody who's sitting at some part of the country needs to be ensured that, if at all I face certain dispute after investing into this country, it should be, well taken care of. We have to come up with the globalization effect. We have to come up with, all these process like PMLA does. PMLA has a power that if they feel that they need to attach a property which is situated abroad, they have very much power to do so. Why? Because at the end of the day, even if it is a cross-border investment or asset, they can take it into picture. And similarly is with the cross-border insolvency. So if there is somebody who could be represented in India, he can very much, take care of the cross-border insolvency. For the reason being that at the end of the day, we have banks, we have NBFCs, we have FIs. Now we are equally treating the FDIs. Yeah? FDI is no different in a stature as to our own national banks and NBFCs and FIs. And that is why cross-border insolvency has to be, within the ambit of IBC code, and it will be taken care
of. Okay. I hope that answers your question. The next thing that we got was please take us through the journey of home buyers vis-a-vis CIRP and how the recent amendments impacted the rights of home buyers. This is also something that was asked to us in the live question round right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, initially, when home buyers were considered, they were considered as an operational creditor, and that is why home buyers were, sent at a backseat. But it was only last year that operational the home buyers were, decided to be treated as financial creditors, and thus they had become very much part of the COC. Now, the thing is, talking about a home buyer, you may very well realize that a person, it takes a lifetime for a person to earn and have one single roof and have that certainty in life, as one may call it, that a middle class, upper middle class just aim to, primarily into business or service sector, or a government job. They want just one house, and they want this certainty, and they don't want to pay rents for indefinite period. They would rather be happily paying the EMIs in return of such rent, and be definite about the certainty about the security of their life being. What happened is, post so 2009 was a worse year for all the builders, and real estate really had touched the rock bottom. But post that, they revived, and 2012 to 2016 was a very golden period for all the real estate promoters and developers and all of that. But then it was the worst time for the home buyers, because let's accept it, all the real estate people, they got very greedy, and we have so many cases, in the Supreme Court. We have cases in the NCDRC. RERA came into picture, and still there are, say, lakhs of home buyers still standing in the middle of nowhere. So as a commoner, one would always face that, where does it end? How does it end? I mean, I'm paying my clients, say, I'm also representing a group of people before the adjudicating authority, who are 121 in number, and then there are more being added up through implement application, and they're facing this problem. And I don't know how to react to when they come up and say that, madam, it is okay, we understand that, there is a COVID-19 thing scenario happening, there is a pause, and then proceedings will be taken into consideration once this is over and courts are into their full-fledged running process. But then at the end of the day, could you give me a deadline? Will I get my house back? Will I get the money back with the interest? What will happen? How long will it take? And you can't come up with a definite answer, despite the fact that you have calculated definite days mentioned in the court. You have 270 days deadline, you have 330 days deadline in the code, but then at the end of the day, you just don't know whether at the end of the day, whatever plan made by the CRP will be approved or not, will be finished in the given timeline, will not be challenged by people innumerable times. And at the end, the question is either yes or no. Will I get my house or not? Will I get my money back or not? Because they're actually paying the EMI day by day. If they don't, there is a catch-22 situation. If they don't pay the EMI to the bank, then their CIBIL score gets spoiled. And the bank also has its own rights. They can move ahead them in the DRT. They can go ahead with the SARFAESI. But at the end of the day, what has happened is, I'm a middle class person. I'm paying my bills on time. I'm paying my EMIs on time. At the end of the day, I have invested a significant amount of my savings of a lifetime to buy a house. But then at the end of the day, either I'm going to RERA, either I'm going to NCDRC, or now insolvency and bankruptcy against the builder. And I have a very blurry future picture being made. I just don't know whether I'll get my house or not. I don't know whether the money that have been invested, imagine lakhs, 30 lakhs, 20 lakhs, some given, had it been lying in my account, and I would have done a simple FD, I would have got a 7% interest for 5-6 years, which makes a very significant amount. But then that is not happening. Yes. I have absolutely nothing in my hand. And that is why there was a need for home buyers to become financial creditors. And when they became the financial creditors, they got enough power to be part of COC. And the recent amendment only shows that what has been the psyche of people who are actually reaching the insolvency and bankruptcy court. Because earlier, when the threshold was 1 lakh and you can always go. So what happened was every single buyer was going to the NCLT against the builder, because clearly 1 lakh is not an amount that one needs to be worried about when it comes to giving an advance payment or allotment during the time of allotment letter or something like that during to the builder. And that is why they were like, okay, now I've paid 15 lakhs, I've paid 16 lakhs, I've paid 40 lakhs, I can go ahead and in my individual capacity against the builder in the insolvency in the before the adjudicating authority. Now what happens is it opened a Pandora box. The adjudicating authority was flooded with individual home buyers coming up, and there were also people who were filing up fraudulent applications. They did not pay the amount to the builder that they were supposed to, yet they were in the court asking for certain remedies from the adjudicating authorities. So yes, because of the innumerable cases being lined up before the adjudicating authority against the same promoter or the same builder or the same developer, it only became the reason for the latest amendment that was made in adherence to the home buyers, that either you have to come in the number of 100 or you should constitute the 10% of the total allottees being made. Now it was only to cut down the frivolous and innumerable applications being filed. But then let us just go to the other side, Rishwin. Imagine, do you think it is possible for 100 of people to come up and have a joint, this communication platform together and file a case? Trust me, I've done it, and it is very difficult. It is very difficult to get the required information from someone, to get the requisite papers from someone, do the calculation, calculate the default amount, calculate it from the default date, decide the default date, and that too you have to do it individually for 100 or 100 plus people, and which is a Herculean task. And at times people have problem with it, because if you are representing, suppose the term default is defined in the IB code, but then what shall be the date of default is
not
a thing of mystery.
Yeah.
And it has been subjectively different in every case, and very soon
Right.
we'll be having a dispute about it, you mark my words. So some person can say that the liability should start from the day when I made the payment, the date of default should be from that day. The other person says that this man promised me to deliver the possession by say after 3 years of giving the advance money, and I'd been paying all these 3 years, so it should be the 3rd year. The other person is saying that no, I've got another letter from the builder, he had asked for some more time, he had mentioned in the agreement already, which they are very smartly done. They do very strong paperwork, and they mention that if at all it is extended, it should not be a problem, and it is either because of the government sanctions or because of any other real estate problems going on. My raw material wasn't provided on time, my certification wasn't afforded on time, my bank wasn't lending me enough money. So they could take any excuse and extend the possession date, which is like a new normal. People are not even astonished when they get a letter that your possession has been extended by 2 years, 3 years, 4 years whatsoever. So the calculation of default date becomes a very conspicuous topic. One just doesn't know how to and when to calculate and how to calculate. And imagine to handle 100 people with 100 kinds of opinion, it becomes very difficult. And that is why when it comes to the very purpose of IBC, that it is a one-stop solution, you need not worry, it comes with a timeline, it somewhere gets defeated when you ask 100 people to come up on the same platform. And at the end of the day, even if I am successfully collecting 100 plus people, their data, reform something out of it, create a default, go before the adjudicating authority and get it admitted, they might just be unhappy with the IRP. They might just be unhappy with the proposed plan. They might just be, some of them might just lose interest and say that, I don't want to proceed further and I just want my money back. I am not interested in plan B of the construction of the rest of the structure, building structure or the flat. And
Right.
but that person also holds one vote. That means he has the power. He can opt out or not, is not up to him anymore. If he's there, he's very much part of it. He has to give consensus. So it gives rise to a lot of confusion when it comes to COC. And we've been seeing a trend before the adjudicating authority, that as soon as something goes wrong, they allege the IRP of being, biased towards the builder, or builder might be, in connivance with the IRP, and that is why he's not talking about our benefit, but the builder, because he's more powerful and he might have bribed him and all of that jazz. This has actually slowed down the IBC proceeding, which is the heartbeat of the code, to do things within the timeline. And if it is not done within the timeline, if it only adds to further confusion, then what is the point?
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you compare it, now supposedly what happens in RERA? Suppose I go before the RERA, I get a favorable order that, the builder must pay the home buyer the principal amount back along with the interest. I take the copy of the order and I'm very happy and haily and hearty, and I go up to the builder and say that, you know what, you have an order against you and you need to pay me now. And the builder is very happy, sitting and saying that I don't have the money to pay you. And then he goes back to the RERA, and he goes back and he says that, he's saying that he doesn't have money. What do we do now? And the RERA says, okay, maybe I'm going to penalize the builder further. And then I go back and say that, listen, you know what, you're going to get penalized. And if you want to save yourself, you better, pay my money. And the builder has the same excuse to give, that, you know what, I do not have the money. Let us not even get how conciliation and arbitration goes. It is 90%, it is always, the award is always challenged. Let's
Right.
go to IPC. Now, as an individual, if at all someone has gone to the police station to lodge an FIR under section 420, it has been a very, very challenging task. They just don't want to file an FIR under section 420. And when applications and cases under all these murders and rapes and theft, all of this is taking so much time, nobody is going to give a damn about cheating.
A 420
So let us not
application.
even get how long IPC can take, and I'm not going to touch the topic how much civil case is going to take. So we needed something very speedy. An ultimate result after RERA, after NCDRC, after IPC, after any civil proceedings is insolvency and bankruptcy, because at the end of the day, a significant number of cases have been dealt and taken care of by IBC, where the home buyers have actually laid their hands on with the IRP's proposed plan. They have given their consent, and some other say promoter or developer or a builder has come up with his own plan, saying that your cost might increase by say 500 per square feet or something like that, but I'm going to be delivering this project to you in 7.5 years. And they were like, one in hand is better than two in the bush. My cost might just increase by a few more grands, but then at the end of the day, fighting with this giant for an insignificant period of years is just not my cup of tea anymore. I might just give few more grants and have my own possession of the house. And that is why insolvency and bankruptcy gives an upper hand to the home buyers in the latest amendments that have been made in their favor.
Right. So, ma'am, we have also received a number of questions even in the live session right now, and this is also something you wanted to talk about. What has been the impact of COVID-19 on homes and buyers, bankers, corporates? How has this entire lockdown and COVID, and I'm not talking about in terms of the amendments that it brought about, the actual practical difficulties that these groups of people are facing now?
Okay. So, Rishan, you will always agree with me when I say that everyone, if we go by a basic economics lesson, we know that everything is a part of a circle. Government is making a lot of changes. It is doing a lot of modifications. It is coming up with schemes. It is giving relieving orders to the people, but nobody is talking about the demand side.
Right.
The demand side is all time low. I do not have I do not have my earnings at one go. My salary is gone, my job is gone, my savings are out. It's going to get washed out any day soon. So I do not have the money, and that is why I do not have the spending capacity, and thus there is no demand, and thus MSMEs who have been, or see even bigger corporate houses have, have gone through a real time mess, and the banks are also not happy because they don't want to lend money further, neither to the developers, nor to the promoters, nor to the builders, nor to the MSMEs, nor through the individuals. Although they have given a time limit moratorium of paying EMIs, but then post that you will see how much interest will they charge, and you will see how banks will run after the individuals. This is going to happen post 31st August, but they are not interested in lending money anymore. So what has happened is a person is in a fix. Now he has realized that at the end of the day, there is one burden, and the burden is on all of us, and it has to be shared by all in order to neutralize the impacts of COVID-19, which the entire country is facing. So if you are my say you are my trader, or you are my manufacturer, or you are my operational creditor, and there is a dispute of say about 5 lakhs, and at the end of the day I challenge you that you better give my money, otherwise I'm going to drag you to the court, and you are very in a very relaxing manner you're sitting back that you knew the Supreme Court judgment that no coercive action can be taken against you, said, okay, why not, let's just go to the court, and it's just a matter of 5 lakh rupees, let us see how it goes and how it ends. And at the end of the day, it is to my disappointment to realize that it is always better to sit down and resettle and reform and recreate and not go to the court, because at the end of the day the courts are also saying to resolve it at a personal level. Be it employer employee, be it your tenant and the landlord, be it the financial institutions and the corporate debtors, everyone is being advised to settle it on a personal level and not reach to the court for impending litigations. Okay, so at the end of the day, when it comes to banks, the banks will face the mayhem. The one institution that will face the severe negative effect of the suspension of IBC, of the suspension of any proceedings under Section 14 SARFAESI, all the proceedings under DRT is the bank. And if my NPAs are only going to get doubled, how will I get things running? How will I lend money further? And at the end of the day, what will I do is I'll be very strict and stringent with my individuals. I'll be very strict with people who have been very honest all their lives and have been paying their EMIs all the time. So at the end of the day,
except for that one time when they're not able to do it.
Not able to do it. Imagine.
Exactly.
So, and if at all they're given that moratorium of 6 months, they have to. It's not that they're done away with it.
Right.
I wish we were sitting in Kuwait or Tehran or somewhere. We're not sitting in a Middle East country who can just completely waive off the loan. We're sitting in India. We are saying that, okay, I'm going to give. It is just a breather that has been provided.
Right.
Like, any inquiry, any investigation, any case will not be, filed against you only till a, limited period of time. But then it will happen. It must happen. It will happen post suspension of this period. It is just a breather. And when you will have to pay post moratorium, you will also have to pay interest. So
right.
At the end of the day, I don't think anything has come to my rescue. It will only be, it is like a double-edged sword. So what is happening? A person is saying that, what, I will not take the moratorium pause. I would rather be paying with whatever little savings that I have. So this is happening on the individual basis. What is happening for the MSMEs or the corporates? FDIs have also gone for a halt. We also have some news, making around the corner that all these top unicorn startups are funded by China. What happens if China withdraws? What happens to the investment? What will SoftBank do? How can SoftBank alone can damage? Or how can Jack Ma alone can damage? Or several other Chinese investments being made in the country for the corporates? What happens if during this rough patch going through two gigantic Southeast Asian countries, how will this impact? Now, if they, which I'm not, because these, despite of what media is telling us and trying to make spice dish out of it. We must realize that India and China both are two very gigantic economies, and they will never ever become starch enemies, because it is going to give a jerk to both the countries, and up to an extent that it is their loss. And if at all we, quote unquote, if we want to become Atmanirbhar, we just can't become overnight. If I
Right.
plan to make a ventilator, the smallest part has been imported from China, and I can't be, from a pin to plane, I can't be just manufacturing and creating everything in my country. And had I been so efficient, Rishwin, I wouldn't be relying on China for every goddamn thing.
Absolutely. Exactly.
So it cannot happen overnight. So what happens is, imagine if I go by whatever the wave is going towards, in the direction that, Anand Mahindra is coming up out loud, that, what, we'll rise to the occasion and we'll give you back, we'll give you the answer, and we will make everything. It is not going to happen overnight. And if at all this happens, you can very well realize, do you think our banks are in a position to lend money? Or do you think any corporate or an individual or an MSME has this much left within him to create something from a scratch? Hell no, not at all. So we are not in a position to be so, optimistic. We are being over optimistic. We have to be very practical. So the approach of the handling of impact of COVID-19 should be, let us sit across, settle down, be it your creditors, be it your financial or operator creditors, be it your lenders, be it your manufacturer, be it the trader, settle down. And maybe once this period is over, supposedly the best solution that can happen is, सपोज जो मैंने आपसे पहले भी कहा कि 5 लाख का मेरा आपका डिस्प्यूट हो गया, सेटल कर देते हैं कि बॉस 2.5 लाख ले लो, 2.5 लाख छोड़ दो, इसमें मेरा भी पूरा लॉस नहीं हुआ, आपका भी पूरा लॉस नहीं हुआ, एंड वी मूव अहेड. हमारी जो एक फाइनेंशियल साइकिल है वो इंडेफिनिट पीरियड के लिए बढ़ गई. सपोजिटली एक कस्टमरी साइकिल है से अबाउट 30 डेज, 30 डेज का आप मुझे एडवांस देते हो, क्रेडिट देते हो. नॉर्मली एमएसएमईज में इतना चलता है कि 30 डेज का फाइनेंशियल साइकिल है या 30 डेज का क्रेडिट दे दिया. नाउ व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इज, इतना ज्यादा लैक ऑफ लिक्विडिटी हो गया है कि ये पीरियड इंक्रीज हो गया है. आई एम अनेबल टू पे. आफ्टर 30 डेज यू आर नॉकिंग माय डोर सेइंग दैट डूड 30 डेज इज ओवर, where is my money? And I'm saying that I'm unable to pay. I know you can't take any coercive action against me because there is a Supreme Court umbrella judgment protecting me. Why should I pay?
Right.
So everything has been brought to a halt, and the only solution of it be, we need to settle the dispute at personal level and not approach to court for every goddamn thing, because there are already so many pending cases before the courts, and they do not have the time, resource, and I do not have the time, resource, and money to get into a litigation for indefinite period. I would rather infuse that money in my work and be done with it, face little
Also,
little
because that's honestly already happening. Almost all India is famous for having
Absolutely.
never-ending litigations,
Absolutely.
right? So what's the whole point of having another
What's the whole
legislation
point?
that is just giving rise to the same thing all over again?
We are only, you will agree to the fact that we will only end ourselves getting into that vicious circle that we'll be
Right.
unable to get out soon.
Right. I think we have a lot of questions pending, and we should now try and wrap this up as quickly as we can. Let's discuss the
say that, or is it your opinion?
No, there are a number of questions, and the webinar actually is going to be hosted only till 6:30 or 6:40.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
yeah, that's the time limitation that is being put on us.
Okay.
So yeah, let's discuss the 2020 ordinance, and why is it actually called a pandemic of an ordinance? What are these drastic sort of changes that are being brought about?
Okay. So to start with, I always have pros and cons into consideration when I give my opinion. So I can never ever be one-sided. This modification, this amendment is also has come up with its own pros and cons. At one look, you might just say that it has come as a breather, it has come as a reliever for people to not have that immediate urgency to pay the amount to the lender because they are unable to do so. but then at the end of the day, it only adds on to slow running of the economy, which will give a worse effect in the coming times. Ordinance 2020 has been, saying that pandemic of the ordinance because they haven't defined the term forever. They have said that even if a company wishes to file an insolvency, which will happen, let me tell you, in near future, they have carved that also till March 2020. They have protected all the directors that no inquiry can be made, or no investigation or no action can be taken against the director during this period. Now imagine if it give rise to two occasions. One, what if I'm able to pay and I'm not paying because I have this umbrella protection? One.
Right.
Number two, I can do all the fraudulent kind of things, being a director or being in power or being somebody related to the finances or economies of the company. I can do any fraudulent thing and no action can be taken against me. And Rashwin, imagine if at all these bad business decisions or fraudulent transaction or undervalued transactions are being taken place, and it will only be dealt by the cost post March 2021. I think the damage will be done by then. And by not defining, by having absolutely no statement from the finance ministry, by absolutely no statement or master circular being passed by the RBI, the banks, the lenders, the NBFCs don't know how to deal with people post March 2021. We just don't know. Is it waived off forever? Is it going to be dealt in a certain manner? Is it be some pre-packaged bankruptcy bailout order? How is it going to be treated? I don't know, because each day it is adding on to the debt. And 1 year is a very significant time when it comes to, forget about large corporate houses. Even for MSMEs, 1 year time is a very long period. So if there is a dispute and I can only deal with it post March, I might be in a condition, I might be in a position to wind up things and go back home. So yes, this is the reason, because there is a blurry situation. There has been no clarity as to how and what things going to be post this suspension period, has actually raised a lot of question and anxiety in people, in banks, in corporates, everywhere. It has
Right.
only given a breather and good time to people with fraudulent
Intentions. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. I think this question we've already answered by way of your discussion here as to what kind
Yes.
of impact we should be expecting. Let's
Mhm.
move on to the next one then. So again, this one is also something that we've sort of discussed. Let's move on to the next one. Right, exactly. This is something that's something we touched upon initially, but now in light of all the discussion that we've had with regards to the 2020 ordinance and um, the proceedings which have been sort of paused for the time being, where is the whole diaspora, and 4 years 5 years down the line, has it been effective, and where do you see it going in the future?
Okay. So I'll say that IBC per se is relatively a much, much better provision than what we had before. But then at the end of the day, I've explained a lot of things as to how it is speedy and it expedites the matter and it has a timeline. I would just want to throw some light on the fact that it has its own lacunas as well, Rishwin. Let us talk
Right.
about that. Okay.
Anji.
So at one go, it does not say about for example, voluntarily liquidation is one of the provisions where one can say that I voluntarily want to liquidate my company, and I want to go about it and I know that I can't take it further. Even when there is a provision of voluntary liquidation, one has to get a consent of 2/3 of the creditors. So to be honest, this voluntary liquidation is not voluntary anymore. And this is a contradiction in the code which the government has not dealt with.
Mhm.
And we will get to see it, because you know how many voluntary liquidations will happen now in another 6 months to 1 year. because people are unable to, carry forward their corporate houses. And what will happen when they want to voluntarily liquidate a company, but there is someone who is giving a pause saying that no, you know what, you will have to work upon, because if I know that there is a pre-packaged bankruptcy happening for that matter, or there is a voluntary liquidation happening, if you get a preemption that you have invested into certain company and it might just go for liquidation, what would your act or reaction be? You will run to the company and make sure that मेरा शेयर का पैसा मुझे मिल जाए, उसके बाद तुम लिक्विडेशन में जाओ, डोंट गिव अ डैम,
जो करना है कर लो.
तुम्हें जो
Exactly. I
करना है
mean, I
करो,
would want to
मुझे
secure
मेरा
my
पैसा
own
मिल.
interest first.
It
Exactly.
will only add on to the financial stress of the company. How does it help? And the government has given absolutely no clarity on it. और ये सिचुएशन अब आप देखिएगा हम फेस करेंगे. लोग जल्द से जल्द जाएंगे जिनको आइडिया होगा कि हम, इन डेली कोलोकियल लैंग्वेज यू से दैट उसका तो दिवालिया पिटने वाला है या उसका दिवालिया पिट गया. बहुत कॉमनली हम सुनते हैं ये बातें. अगर मुझे एप्रीहेंशन हो जाएगा कि एक आदमी है जिसकी मेरी लेनदारी है और उसका दिवालिया पिटने वाला है और वो वॉलंटरी लिक्विडेशन के लिए जा रहा है, मैं सबसे पहले उसके गले पे बंदूक रख के कहूंगा मेरा पैसा दे दे, उसके बाद जाने
मेरा पैसा पहले दो. Exactly.
And we don't know how government is going to deal with that. So these are very important. Yeah, these are very important gray areas. Now coming back to how cases have been dealt with under IBC, if we go by it, इतना कम समय तो लगा नहीं. 4 साल का समय भी चला गया चीजों को रेगुलेट करके, फॉर्मुलाइज करके फाइनलिटी पे लाने के लिए. तो कहीं ना कहीं जो डे वन से इन्वॉल्व था उसका तो पर्पस बीट हो गया, जिसको ये उम्मीद थी कि उसका काम जल्दी खत्म हो जाएगा. And just imagine the cost that one has to bear to maintain, the CIRP proceedings, because it is done at the cost of the COC. आप imagine करिए, एक तो मैं cost भी bear करूंगा, उसके बाद टाइम भी लगेगा, उसके बाद एक ऑर्डर निकलेगा कि जो मुझे प्रपोज प्लान मुझे फेवर में नहीं लगेगा, तो फिर मैं दूसरा आरपी अपॉइंट करूंगा, फिर शुरुआत होगी. एंड इट कैन वेरी, आई नो इट साउंड्स वेरी ऑब्वियस दैट इट इज गोइंग नोवेयर. So recovery rate is very much there, but then I think there is a long way to go. There is a long way to go, and there are certain loopholes. For that example, individual insolvency के बारे में कोई बात नहीं हुई. वो proposal था लेकिन आज तक finalize नहीं हुआ. And now as an individual, again I'm saying that due to COVID has done a lot of damage, Rishman, and that is why post impact जो आप देखेंगे उसमें ये चीजें सामने आएंगी. How to deal, LLPs हैं, companies हैं, लेकिन इंडिविजुअल्स नहीं है. बट फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई एम अ फ्रीलांसर और मुझे बेसिक जो है से 10 लाख का लोन अवेलेबल कर दिया है बैंक ने. हर बैंक के लिए छोटे से छोटा, बड़े से बड़ा अकाउंट सब इंपॉर्टेंट होता है व्हेन इट कम्स टू रिकवरी. पर मेरे अगेंस्ट वो कहीं जा नहीं पाएगा. सरफेसी में भी उसको रोक दिया, डीआरटी में भी उसको रोक दिया. So all these small individuals combined together give a huge damage to the bank.
Right.
And it has not been dealt with under the IBC code. And with times to come, if they do not, bring certain necessary amendments in the act, we are going to face this problem for sure. अभी तक वो 20 IRP को जो लिमिट करने वाली है कि लिमिटेड केसेस जो हैं वो उनको डील करना है, he cannot take number of cases beyond a specific number, has not been finalized. If that does not happen, now imagine single resolution professional facing so many cases and not able to, finalize even a single case. That is also going to happen. And why only COVID? These are certain things that we could have thought of beforehand. I mean, the economy wasn't in the best shape before March 2020.
Right.
If we go by last 2 years, the economy has been downtrodden. I think unemployment had reached to all-time high in last 30 years, say 43% or something like that. And when it comes,
unfortunately, there was no sense of urgency. I think to that extent, you're right. All of these issues have already been prevalent in our society. But March 20
Indian Standard Time, definitely there wasn't an urgency. But if we go by what NPAs of the banks had to tell, we definitely had the urgency in it.
Yes.
We definitely had the urgency.
March 2020 onwards, all of these issues have just become more blaringly obvious, and we are staring right at them. You can't ignore these issues anymore. That's what's happening. So
it only reflects to the glaring lack of how defaulted, how weak your structure is to deal with
Right.
such situation.
Absolutely.
With 42, I think Ratnas and Maharatnas, 42
Mhm.
companies being disinvested, I'm sure the
Right.
country wasn't having a great time.
Yeah.
So why only blame COVID? We weren't prepared for it. It only add on to the worst scenario that we were already going through.
Exactly. So COVID just came at a time where we were already underprepared, and now we're trying to just save ourselves and save our
But
face.
let me add to the silver line before everybody who's listening gets disappointed to the core, that
Right.
the silver lining is there has also been provisions for MSMEs into picture, where 3 lakh crores of amount has been invested by the companies.
Infused.
The bar has been raised. So earlier एक MSME का प्लांट एंड मशीनरी में अगर 50 crores का होता था और टर्नओवर 250 crores से कम का भी होता था, तो वो मीडियम एंटरप्राइज में आती थी. अभी उसको रेज कर दिया है. तो क्या हुआ है, जो एमएसएमई नहीं भी होती थी वो भी इस कैटेगरी में आ जाती थी.
आ गए
उनको
हैं.
आ गए हैं,
को भी
उसकी
वो
वजह से
बेनिफिट्स
फायदे हो
बेनिफिट्स
रहे
मिल जाएंगे.
हैं. एक इमरजेंसी क्रेडिट लाइन गारंटी स्कीम लॉन्च हुई है, जो कि 3 लाख करोड़ का इन्वेस्टमेंट है. उसमें आपका बैकग्राउंड चेक करने के बाद सर्टेन टर्नओवर दैट यू हैव, से 25 सीआर का अगर आपका कंबाइंड डेट है अगेंस्ट ऑल द लेंडर्स, और अगर आपका एनुअल टर्नओवर है अबाउट 250 सीआर और समथिंग लाइक दैट, तो या 250 सीआर, तो बैंक आपको एक बैकिंग एज अ गारंटर आपके लिए अवेलेबल है, बिकॉज द बैंक्स नो दैट द बिगर कॉर्पोरेट हाउसेस विल मैनेज समहाउ. आपको लगता है कि जियो को कोई प्रॉब्लम हुई? आपको लगता है टाटा में कोई फर्क आया डे टू डे?
They've just raised 11 rounds of funding in the
Imagine.
past 1 month itself.
So you'll accept that they had certain firewall, they had plan B, they had certain cushions to lay their bags onto. But then
Right.
these MSMEs were the one who were actually brought on road, and that is why the government is trying to infuse a significant amount. The government is ready to be the guarantor of such MSME. If you haven't registered yourself as MSME, you register yourself now. इनफैक्ट ट्रेडर्स को एमएसएमई में नहीं लिया जाता था, बट थोड़ी बहुत मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करके अगर आप डील करते तो अब ट्रेडर्स को भी ले रहे हैं, सो दैट एक फाइनेंशियल सिक्योरिटी आदमी के दिमाग में रहे, और जो डेली साइकिल है बिजनेस की वो दोबारा से फ्लो में आ जाए, बिकॉज जब ये सारे पहिए चलेंगे तभी इकोनॉमी चलेगी.
Right. Absolutely. I think.
I don't know if we can take any few questions. I am liking all the questions though. Can you guys like send me all these questions on a mail and I answer you back or something like that? Because
we can we have time right now. We can answer a couple of these even in the live session. So I was just about to say that before I put on the thank you slide, I will put on the first slide all over again, so that everybody can take down your name, your number, email ID, everything.
Email ID is not visible, is it?
No. Yeah, everything's there. I think people should be able to note it down. If not, I'll ask Chandrika to put these down on the chat as well. And while people are saving all your information, we can answer a couple of these questions. I think you have them on your screen. You can pick up whichever ones you wish to answer. I think some of these questions are also going to be a part of your second session. So we can make that clear, that the kind of questions you will be answering in the second session, which we will be having on Monday. But whatever ones are relevant for today's session, you can please go ahead and answer them right now.
Okay, so can I just pick up few questions, because I think they are quick to answer, and then
of course, please, the floor is all yours. Please go ahead.
One question: are the liquidation regulations under IBC mandatory to follow? Parishkriti Atri has asked this. No, because that was never the aim of IBC. It was always to regulate and come up with plan B. As I've said many a times, we never ever want liquidation to happen. Okay, it is only the last resort at times, and there is a difference between winding up and liquidation. Even if the company is winded up, there is legal entity intact. It is only after liquidation that it all it gets all of this gets over. So IBC would never ever want this. It is not mandatory to follow the liquidation regulations. What is the reason of operational creditors not being on the same as financial creditors? Because of the money infused. The money infused by the operational creditors is relatively lesser as compared to the financial creditors. This is the truth. And on paper, what the government has to say is, that they are not being given power because it becomes. So what is an operational creditor? डे टू डे आपका जो ट्रेड जिसके साथ हो रहा है. फाइनेंशियल क्रेडिटर क्या है? आपका स्टेक होता है, उसका कोलैटरल सिक्योरिटी होती है, पर्सनल गारंटर डालते हो, उसके पास बहुत सारे प्रोविजन होते हैं, इसीलिए उसकी पावर टू कंट्रोल सच थिंग्स जो है एज कंपेयर टू द ऑपरेशनल क्रेडिटर काफी ज्यादा हो जाती है. Ma'am, we have fast track IRP according to which insolvency process should get completed within 90 days. My question is, does it work? Absolutely not. There is nothing called fast IRP. If he works too fast, they say he's biased. If he doesn't, then he is not efficient. And that is why there is a, there is a loophole and we need to work on this. I'm sure there is going to be some very significant amendment very soon. Can criminal proceedings be initiated against by one under IBC? If there is a criminal proceeding, why will be under IBC? Are you trying to, let me just reframe it for you. Are you asking that can criminal proceedings parallelly happen if there is a proceeding under IBC? Definitely you can. It is your right, you can. Ma'am, who initiates the IRP? I think this is primarily on how, Rishwin, I think procedure. I have to make my, procedure. What I do is possible I take up all these questions, I make a slide for Monday, and ये procedures बताते वक्त मुझे लगता है कि मैं ये सारे questions pick up कर सकती हूँ जिससे.
That's why I said कि some of these questions are more academic in nature, more jurisprudential in nature, which we can address right now. Some are more procedural, which are more relevant for
for the next session. Yeah. So Priyanka has asked, are home buyers secure creditors under IBC? Yes, thankfully. Can current globalization processes increase the systematic risk of global economy and financial crisis? It is a very rhetoric question, boss. Yes, Coming Star, I don't know, I can't read the surname here. So yeah, the globalization process has increased, but then you should also realize that, okay, let's talk on a micro level and then let's talk on a international level. Why do you think when something goes wrong with decision making of a big corporate house is taken care of, but when there is a profit being made by the same corporate house, the profit is solely enjoyed by the corporate itself? This is how is the working of my economy. अगर अनिल अंबानी एक गलत डिसीजन लेता है तो उसका इम्पैक्ट पर पर्सन पे थोड़ा 130 करोड़, तो 130 करोड़ में वो सारा न्यूट्रलाइज हो जाता है कि पर पर्सन वो बहुत कम आ जाता है इम्पैक्ट. लेकिन जब अनिल अंबानी का प्रॉफिट मेकिंग होती है, जो कि हो नहीं रही है, विच इज वेरी फनी टू कोट, अगर होती है तो दैट इज सोली एंजॉयड बाय अनिल अंबानी, एंड वहां पर आपका प्रॉफिट 130 करोड़ में नहीं बट रहा है. Same is with even now talking about globally. Now, agar aap kehte hain ki when there is a globalization process increasing, there is a systematic risk of global economy and financial crisis. Definitely, with cross-border investments, with things like FDIs, we need to curb all of this by having a very strict and stringent laws, which brings me to the very existence of IBC code. And
such a beautiful analogy that you've given. I've still not been able to get over the fact that how beautiful you explain this concept, that if there's a loss, everybody is going to suffer through it. But if there's a profit, only the main person who's running the show is going to benefit from it all. So it's such a... Yeah. Go ahead, please.
So what happens is, yes, we are going to face. So the thing is, when it is happening globally, I better be inviting my investors in a way that saying that your money is safe. If it is not, we have a system to take care of any kind of financial dispute that you're going to face. If not, then, you will just discourage investors, and then you will be, part of some third world, and rest of the world will be, the ones will be having very stringent laws, will be having an ease of doing business. And that is why there are more than 50-60 companies above India, because they know that they've been dealing with things and they have a law structure which has been well taken care of in situations, that similar situations of crisis that has happened before, which has not happened now, which is eventually happening in India. And with COVID, I think in our ministry, our legislature are more so pressurized to have such stringent laws, because let's accept it, yes, we need investors. So as far as the impact is concerned, it will give impact, but then if we have strict laws, it will still invite people to come up, because apart from everything said and done, India, because of the elasticity of the economy, has the power to bear losses and to bounce back. any given
Right.
situation.
True.
So, ma'am, ARCs have a role in relation to, I believe, asset reconstruction companies. Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah.
But then ARCs are more so helpful when it comes to surfacey matters. And off late, ARCs have lost their credibility because it has become a mechanism how to evade losses. So, very quickly, because it's very interesting. मैंने आपसे 100 रुपए लोन लिया, मैंने कह दिया मैं आई एम अनेबल टू पे, देन ARC comes into picture and it says the bank that boss एक सर्टिफिकेशन प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं, मुझसे पैसा ले लो, मैं इसकी बाद में प्रॉपर्टी ऑक्शन करवा के जो भी पैसा मिलेगा वो मेरा हो जाएगा, आप अभी मुझसे ले लो, बट मैं 100 नहीं दे पाऊंगा, 100 की जगह 60 दूंगा, चलेगा? नाउ बैंक जो ऑलरेडी इतने डिस्ट्रेस में है वो कहेगा कि 1 भाई 0 से तो बेटर 60 है, 100 तो मुझे मिलता नहीं 4 साल बाद भी, वो सर्टिफिकेट लेके द बैंक इज हैप्पी. नाउ व्हाट इज हैपेंस इज ARC आ जाता है आपके डिफॉल्टर के पास, यानी मेरे पास, कि ऐसा है अब जो है प्रॉपर्टी को 100 रुपए के लोन पे 60 रुपए देके 90 में प्रॉपर्टी बेचेंगे, आधा आप रखना आधा
हमारी जेब में. Exactly.
What who is benefited? ARC and the defaulter, and who's at loss? The banks. So ARCs of late was a very hot topic till 2015, 16, maximum 17. Uske baad they are losing credibility. I was expecting 5 years back that we'll get to see, because there was so much NPAs rising, I was expecting all the ARCs to come into picture and rising, but it did not happen. And meanwhile, IBC came into picture, which was much of a relieving impact as compared to IRCs, ARCs helping the banks, the lenders. Mm-hmm. The minimum default that has now increased to 1 crore. What would be the negative and positive of the same? Till when I think we have discussed it in detail, but then I'll tell you again, ये एक बार में सुनने में हमें MSMEs और corporates के लिए बहुत अच्छा लगता है, but ये banks के लिए बहुत बड़े loss की बात है. इस वजह से जो ultimate effect होगा, it is just a breather. उसके बाद once this is over, at the end of the day, the corporates will have to face the heat. And yes, it will only slow down the economy. It will only slow down the working of, the GDP, the inflation, the demand side, supply side. Everything has been slowed down for bad, not for good.
I think if everybody's noted the number, then I'll take off the...
Parishkriti has a lot of questions for me. Why don't you touch base with me over the mail? And
both Parishkriti and Shikhar Sahu. Both of these have posed a lot of questions.
But that is also proof that they have been diligently listening all through this webinar. So thank you, both of you. Why IBC? Vishal has said why IBC said that it is easy for big corporate to make more money. Okay. My question. Okay. Because you know what, they have a lot of firewall. A big corporate comes up with a big goodwill that has been built over years of time. So when I sit across an investor, I do not need much to convince him, because I being a Tata, I being an Ambani, I being a Godrej, I being Vadra, not Vadra, who is Preeti Zinta's husband, that Bombay Dine, one of the corporate houses, the Hindustan Lever for that matter, pick up any company. So the point is, if I have a goodwill, if I'm a big corporate house, I have built my goodwill over generations. So when I sit across an investor, I do not need to convince my investor much. And also I have these backups, I have these firewall built up for the, say, about contingencies that I might just face in future. I have so many sister concerns, I have group of companies, so I have so many provisions to have that cushion and face a shock absorber sort of a planning for myself, which is very, very rare for MSMEs. Jaise taise jo 50 CR is not an amount when it comes to MSMEs. They somehow manage to build up, they somehow manage to run the financial cycle, they somehow manage to infuse capital every now and then out of their savings. And ultimately, when this COVID thing happens and the production stops, if you compare the two situations, the bigger corporate house have faced nothing as the heat being faced by the MSME during this COVID period. I only restricted to the COVID period, by the way. And yes, per se, these, let's accept it, these big 10-15 corporate houses decides our law, decides our lending rate, decides our bank reforms, decides our master circular. Please don't arrest me for this statement, but this is true.
Any more questions you have that you wish to answer in this session?
Okay, Parishriti is a second year law student. No, yeah, second year of the 3-year course who's very interested
Of
in
3
IBC
years.
related topics. Yeah. Although I haven't been taught about the same in college yet, but I still want to ask if you could give a brief waterfall mechanism. It's a very detailed topic, waterfall mechanism. That would be helpful, ma'am. What we do is, Rashmin, we pick up this particular topic in while we discuss the process of the entire process under IBC. I think now I have a feeling that we could have done the entire process webinar before and then would have done this now. I don't know.
But then unless, so most of us have studied jurisprudence in the first year, right? Unless you understand where law comes from and what is the reason behind the need for a law, how will you understand how the law operates?
Procedures of it.
Exactly.
Well, good.
And
thank you for coming for my rescue. Thank you so much, Rashmin, for coming to my rescue.
These procedures are something that everybody keeps asking, is because, of course, in practice, knowing these is more important. But I also personally feel that if you understand where something is coming from, then knowing these procedures is just a matter of practice and remembering it. That's about it. But
Absolutely.
if you understand, again, just the jurisprudence of IBC and the need for it, I think you're more or less good to go. Then, Parishruti, honestly, if you just go back and read the waterfall, I think it's under section 47, if I'm not wrong. You will more or less be able to understand what's happening and why it is happening. But nonetheless, yes, exactly. Nonetheless, we'll talk about it on Monday as well. Thank you so much, ma'am. This has been extremely helpful. Very rich session, very content-packed session. And I'm glad knowing the fact that this is not coming to an end right now. This is just the one half of it. To all our audience members, everybody listening to us live right now, we have a second
feedback. I can change the content or the tone or the texture for the next webinar in case if there are feedbacks. I am always up for constructive criticism.
Right. Yeah. So yes, please let us know if there's anything you'd like changed in the format for the session on Monday, and please tune in for the session on Monday as well. There'll be a lot more discussion.
Add one last thing? Can I just
please
because this is very important and it adds on to the confusion as far as the suspension is concerned. बहुत लोगों को ये confusion है कि 25 मार्च के बाद default की कोई filing नहीं होगी under section 7, 9 and 10. So let me just tell you कि default जो word है ना, that decides everything. अगर default 25 मार्च के बाद हुआ है तो आप सस्पेंशन के पर्व्यू में फॉल करोगे. अगर आपका डिफॉल्ट पहले हुआ है तो इट्स नॉट दैट पोस्ट 25th मार्च टिल द सस्पेंशन पीरियड इज ऑन आप फाइलिंग नहीं कर सकते. यू कैन वेरी मच डू द फाइलिंग. इट्स जस्ट दैट यू नीड टू कन्विंस द कोर्ट दैट दिस पर्टिकुलर default had happened not because of things due to COVID and not during the COVID suspension period. ये बहुत important बात है. So filing hasn't stopped. नई filing हो रही है, बिल्कुल हो रही है. It's just that 25th March से पहले का अगर default है, and if you can convince the court for that, you stand admitted. And I think we will wind up here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'd also like to thank Lawyered for having conducted this session and given us this platform to talk about all of this. Guys, stay tuned. Monday we're coming back, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.